Please don't do these mistakes if you're a beginner learning Japanese. Hi guys, it's me Ruri. If you're new to this channel, I'm half Japanese and I grew up talking to Japanese and Japanese is my mother tongue. Today we're going to talk about the most common mistakes that I repeatedly see beginners doing. I'm going to explain how to fix those problems. Okay, so the first mistake that I've seen so many times and surprises me is that learning Japanese only using Romaji. If you don't know, Romaji is basically Latin alphabets. You might think, how am I supposed to learn Japanese without using Latin alphabets? The thing is, if you're a complete beginner and if you're just started to learn Japanese, of course, if you don't know hiragana, katakana, and kanji, the only way for you to read Japanese is using Romaji, so the Latin alphabets. That's totally fine. But the issue that I've seen is that when you only use Romaji for learning Japanese, because Japanese is not a Romaji based, so Latin alphabet based language, the pronunciation is different. So how you would pronounce a word using hiragana and katakana versus Romaji is of course will be different. And if you will keep using Romaji to learn Japanese, with the time you will see that your pronunciation is really different than what Japanese should sound like. So my advice will be, first, of course in the beginning, rely on Romaji, that is fine. But as soon as possible, learn hiragana and katakana please, so that you will learn how to pronounce Japanese words in the correct way. Okay, so the second tip or second mistake is not learning kanji. This is a bit tricky problem, to be honest, because it really depends on your goal. If you're learning Japanese only to understand and watch anime, then that's totally fine. You don't need to learn kanji. That is completely okay. But if you're gonna use Japanese in Japan, or maybe for your work or any other thing than only understanding anime or Japanese dramas and music and stuff, you need kanji. I'm sorry to tell you, but kanji is a huge part of our life in Japan as a Japanese person, because it's one of the 3 main alphabets that we have. Nobody likes kanji except some weirdos. I'm sorry if you like kanji, but I don't like it. Anyway, a lot of people try to avoid kanjis when learning Japanese, but kanjis can be really useful, in day-to-day life in Japan, or understanding Japanese text, or understanding Japanese generally. You can't skip a whole alphabet, I'm sorry. But when learning kanji, the most common question that I always repeatedly get is that how can I learn kanji in a fun way or effective way? But I already made a video about it, which you can watch here, a detailed video about learning Japanese. I always recommend finding a fun way to learn a language, because if you're learning a language just for the sake of learning it, it kind of feels like work, But if you have fun while learning it, it will become much easier for you because it doesn't feel like work anymore. So making the process fun is always crucial when learning language. And for that, I recommend today's sponsor, Mochi app. We collaborated before, as I said in the previous video that I made, and people really love this. So we are collaborating once again because you guys really liked it. On Mochi app, you can learn kanji and also vocabulary using flashcards. Flashcards are really handy when it comes to learning something. When you have a flashcard, you think about it, how can I read this kanji, or what is this meaning of this vocabulary? You're trying to actively recall, and this process is scientifically proven that it's one of the best ways to study. And when learning these kanjis and vocabularies, another scientific proven way to study is spaced repetition. So you basically repeat the things that you learned in intervals. But sometimes the spaced repetition can be tricky because you might think when do I need to revise the thing that I learned? Do I need to wait a day, 3 days, a week, whatever? You need to plan when you're gonna revise, right? But on Mochi app, it's pretty easy because it tells you the golden hour, so the best time for you to revise, and it reminds you it's time to revise already, it's your golden time, don't miss it, type of a thing. Not only it reminds you, but it also has a really cute interface. I think this is one of the things that people really like about Mochi is that the interface is so cute. You might think this is a really small detail, but as I said, alongside learning language is a whole journey. It's really long. So when the interface is cute, and if you're using it even 1% more because of the cute interface, it's a win for us. When revising things and when learning things, there are 5 stages of memorization. Just because you revise a kanji or vocabulary just once, it doesn't mean that it's in your long-term memory, right? So Mochi app will categorize you in which stage you are, so that you will understand, oh, I revised this thing 2 times, but it's still not in like stage 5 or stage, I don't know, 4 or something. Maybe I need to revise again. So it gives you the clear understanding of how much you memorize of that thing, and it will also remind you to when to revise. So it's a pretty good thing. You can use this app as a complete, and also there is a course list. So there are different levels of Japanese, so you can find your level, click there, and find the lessons from there. Another really handy function is you can listen to pronunciation. So when learning a new vocabulary or a new kanji, if you don't know how to pronounce it, you might pronounce it in the wrong way. But you can listen it and check whether your pronunciation is right. I really recommend using Mochi Mochi app. Everything will be linked down in the description below so that you can download Mochi Mochi and give it a try. It's free. So if you want to learn kanji or generally like in Japanese, I would highly recommend using Mochi Mochi because it makes the process much fun and easier for you guys. So I would recommend. Thank you Mochi Mochi for sponsoring this video. Third reason is not having a specific reason. Actually, this is crucial. Like if you're learning Japanese or any other language, actually, think about it. Why are you learning this language? Because depending on your reason, depending on your goal, the way, the method that you use will change. If you're learning Japanese only for anime, then you can maybe skip kanji. You can focus more on the conversations rather than like grammatics and maybe like more complicated parts of learning Japanese. But if you're gonna use it for business or maybe for school, then you might want to focus more on grammar. Or if you just want to use for daily conversation, then maybe you should focus more on daily conversation Japanese. So if you don't know clearly what your goal when learning Japanese is, please stop this video and think about it. Why are you learning Japanese? And create a path, create a learning path according to your goal. So another mistake is not doing enough practice with native speakers. Not doing enough practice with native speakers can be really tricky because I realize a lot of people only learn Japanese through animes or maybe media. But the thing is, the daily conversation Japanese and the anime Japanese or any type of media or content can be really different from each other. Because it's made for entertainment purpose, and in daily life we use Japanese to communicate, to understand each other. So they have different goals. Therefore, if you're only learning Japanese from anime, your Japanese can sound a bit weird. And I can recognize immediately if that person learned Japanese from anime because it sounds weird. If you want to sound natural and if you want to talk like a native speaker, you need to practice with native speakers. For that, you don't need to do an exchange in Japan or something, you know? This is the internet era, so you can use services, apps, or I don't know, sites to find native speakers in Japanese, and you can chat with them, talk with them, you can, you know, make friends, and you can even use like Instagram to find people, so it shouldn't be that hard. You don't need to spend a bunch of money to find Japanese native speaker. There are so many services out there, so you can check them out. When talking about sounding natural, I think this is also crucial, only using textbooks. So, I understand to learn grammar and vocabulary, using textbooks can be really handy. But if you're only using textbooks when learning a language, not only Japanese to be honest, it can be problematic. Because most of the time textbooks are outdated. Language is something that lives. As I said twice, language is something that lives. So since these textbooks are outdated, it might not sound natural, you know, in current Japan. So I would always recommend you to use other sources like Mochi Mochi and talking to native speakers, consuming media, and also using textbooks to improve your Japanese skills and to sound more natural. I feel like this one is not talked about enough. It's not learning the culture. I feel like not a lot of people are talking about it when giving language tips. Language and culture are truly tied together, you know? You cannot separate them from each other because in order to understand the language, you need to understand the culture as well, especially if you're coming from a very different culture from Japan. Sometimes when learning a foreign language, the rules or the way they say it might not make sense at all because you have a different reality than Japanese people. But by understanding the culture and by understanding Japanese mentality or the way they think, you can actually really understand the language even better, because from the language you can see the cultural bits of the Japanese people and Japanese history and Japanese values. So I would always recommend to learn Japanese culture if you want to have a deeper understanding of Japanese. And I feel like learning the culture is the most fun part of learning a language. It's just my personal opinion, but I really love learning other cultures. When I was learning German, learning the German culture really allows you to understand the German language and how they phrase things. So I would recommend to learn Japanese. I would highly recommend you to learn Japanese culture. It's unique like every other culture out there, so just learn it, you know. It really broadens up your vision and it gives you new values, because there is no right or wrong in this world. They're just different values according to different cultures and different ways of understanding. I recommend. So the last one, especially if you're watching this video, is looking for the perfect method, to look for the fastest way to learn Japanese, you know. I understand learning a language is a very long journey, so sometimes we want to use shortcuts and we want to find a perfect way so that we can make sure that we're learning in the fastest pace, you know. But the important thing is enjoying the journey. Of course, you need to try new methods because everybody learns in a different way. The method that works for me might not work for you. So yes, I'm giving like these tips, but you can try out and find out what works for you. And in order to find out the best method that works for you, you need to give the method a bit of time. You know, you need to trust the process, because just because you tried the method for a week and you didn't learn that much, it doesn't mean that it doesn't work for you, you know? You need to give a bit of time, maybe, I don't know, 2 to 3 months, and then give yourself an honest feedback. Is this method working for me? Is this an efficient way to learn the language? With the feedback, think about it. What can I improve about this method? Or maybe this is not the way that I want to learn a language. I don't enjoy it. Even though it's effective, it might not be really fun. So think about it. How can I make it more fun, more enjoyable? It's a long journey, so you need to have a patience, but also give yourself an honest feedback each time. Is this working for me? So yeah, that was it for today's video. If you have any questions, drop them down below, and don't forget to check Mochi Mochi app. It's free. You can use it from today on Android, iPhone. You know, don't say I don't have time. If you're waiting for a bus, just do a couple of exercises, you know. Thank you much for sponsoring this video, and see you next time.